Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Coach's Thoughts. My name's Ed. I'm one of the coaches at Charge CrossFit. If you're listening in, if you're a charger, you'll know me quite well. Today, we're going to talk about a topic which lots of people feel pretty strongly about amongst the coaching community. And I have some strong opinions, but they're not necessarily one side or the other on what action should be taken here. And we're talking about using percentages in strength training. And in particular, to be more specific, we're talking about using percentages in strength training in CrossFit. And if I can be even more specific, in a CrossFit affiliate environment, in a CrossFit affiliate class environment and the programming there. When I say I feel quite strongly about it, what I've observed in my time in CrossFit, and I would like to think that I've seen a lot of gyms that program with percentages, and I've seen a lot of gyms that program without percentages, is that I feel strongly that what you'll have, like, both can be done well. And I've seen successful programming take place with both options. And really, it ends up being just a commitment to, okay, we're doing it this way, and we have to make sure that we watch out for the traps of doing it that way and implement it correctly. So there's been some really good questions about percentages in strength training, and I intend to address them. And I'm hoping this will be insightful. And if you have any questions or disagreements with what I say, like that's what this segment is for. Like I want to talk about that stuff and hear about it. So let's have a look. First of all, I think it's really important we define what percentages are. And to some people who have been around this type of environment before, this is going to be sky's blue stuff, but I intend this to be interesting information for everyone. So percentages in strength training would be normally written something like this. It just says back. It should say back squat. Back squat, 5 sets of 5 at 85%. And what it's referring to there is that you should do 5 sets of 5 repetitions at 85% of your 1 repetition max. So let's just work in round numbers. It seems to be a theme in this show. You'll do 5 sets of 5. Let's say one arm is 100 kilos. You do 5 sets of 5 at 85 kilograms on this particular day's programming. And the program is specifying the weight exactly that you should hit via this percentage. If your one arm back squat was 200 kilos, you'd be doing 170 kilos for 5 sets of 5. So that's what percentages are in really sort of plain terms. So why would you do percentages in a strength program or in the strength portion of CrossFit? And really the answer to this is it allows you to modulate intensity. I've used a big fancy word there. It allows you to change intensity. So if we look at the 5 sets of 5 for a back squat, and keep in mind I'm using generalizations here, but the point still stays valid even if you don't agree with the numbers that I'm about to use. If I said that, hey guys, today we're going to do 5 sets at 70% of your 1RM, basically what I'm saying is today's back squats are at low intensity. They are light back squats. If I say, hey guys, today I'm looking for 5 at 80% of your 1RM, well, then I'm looking for sort of like challenging but manageable. Perhaps like, that's a weight where you feel like you could do heavier or you feel like you could do more than a 5th rep. And if I say 5 at 87 to 90%, we're talking like, hey, like after the 5th rep, you are thanking the higher powers that there's no more repetitions. So the percentages allows me to sort of prescribe what intensity that I'm looking for. In the broader sense of the program, what it allows me to do is slowly but surely increase that intensity via load. So for example, this week we're doing 5 at 80%. Next week we do 5 at 85%. The week after that, we're going to do 4 at 90%. And I can have this systematic stepping up of intensity with the lift that I've chosen to prescribe the percentages to. And normally if you're prescribing them for one lift, you're prescribing them for all lifts. So that's why you could use, and the value of using percentages is this systematic way to prescribe and then increase intensity or increase load, which is a form of intensity over the duration of the program, I should say. For it to work and for this system to make any sense at all and for you to prescribe percentages, you have to have a relevant 1RM. first of all, you have to have a 1RM. So you have to have tested what your 1 is. You can theorize a 1RM, but it's better if you have a real 1RM. And it has to be relevant. So, it has to be something that's been tested recently, depending on what phase of training you are in versus what you've been in before. You might have numbers that just aren't actually real anymore. I know that for myself. Like, I think of the best ever, I guess, back squat that I've done, and that isn't a back squat weight that I could squat right now. And I haven't tested a 1RM back squat that recently, so I wouldn't know what I have for a single right now. I could have a guess at it, but that doesn't, like, having a guess isn't really appropriate, because the whole point of percentages is being specific. So if you're working off a number that isn't specific, well, then all the percentages are non-specific. You have to have a program that understands what phase of the program you're in. That should be you're in. So what I mean by that is, the percentages have to understand where you're at. I on the previous slide, I talked about, what would be considered light, medium, and heavy. Well, if you've had 7 weeks off because you've been on holidays, or you're coming back from injury, it makes no sense that the program says, 5 at 93%, which would be absolutely like crazy intensity. So the percentages have to make it, like, they have to meet you where you're at. And then third of all, and this is not part of the program, but it's a part of the realistic application of this, you have to be okay with not being able to hit the percentage. That's just, if you walked into a gym that had a percentage prescribed for the day, I guarantee, depending on how many people go through the gym, that there'll be a number of people that cannot lift the weight that you have prescribed for that percentage, for that amount of reps on that day. And there'll be a whole host of reasons, and it doesn't really matter what they are. I'm just telling you, you need to be prepared that people won't be able to hit that percentage. So you have to have why am I putting this in for it to work? You have to have a backup plan there as to, okay, what do I do with people who just can't simply do the thing that I've asked them to do today? So that was the reasons why and what you might need. And here's the reasons, why you might consider not using percentages. And the first dot point that I've put is it actually doesn't allow you to modulate intensity, which is interesting, because that was the main point you would use percentages. But I'm going to put forward, I guess, the opposite argument. So in a program that involves hundreds of movements with hundreds of athletes, with hundreds of possible combinations, which is what the affiliate programming is, how can you possibly know that 85% is the right percentage for today for every single person in every single circumstance? And the answer is you cannot. And here are some examples of that. 5 at 85% might be too light for people who have got stronger. You might put 85% of what you thought was a 1RM on the bar for them, and it's moving up and down like crazy. Now, some of you might be like, well, that doesn't happen. And it's like, well, it actually does for people who are newer to a program. If you're new to a strength training program, your 1RM will be improving weekly, if not even quicker, depending on how new you are. So 85% is a moving target. It's not a real number anymore. 85% might be too heavy for people who are just tired. Like, you say, hey, you're doing 85% today. That's this weight. And they just can't do it on that day. Previous day's training, not enough sleep, you name it. And then you're going to have a group of people that can do the percentage, so they can actually perform the task, but they can't do it with good mechanics. So you're sacrificing good, safe position for this I guess, percentage, this number that you think is important for today. And the reason that I've said that it doesn't actually allow you to modulate intensity is that if you do percentages properly, and you are like, hey, today you have to do these at this weight, no ifs, buts, or maybes, well, then you can't adapt the intensity. You can't make it heavier or lighter. You have to do it at the weight that it's written at in the program. Now, there are some benefits to that. Some people like the sort of, I don't feel like I can do this today, but the program says this percentage. That actually is a huge, in my opinion, reason that percentages can work really well for people. They give people a goal. So that's something to keep in mind. But for some people, it's like that is not like you've given them a goal that they can't achieve, and you're putting them potentially in harm's way at doing so. By the way, if you're a person who likes percentages, I know that you're already thinking of all the counter arguments to everything I just said. So we're going to talk about them now. So if the percentages, like this is the counter argument, I suppose. This is the counter argument in a nutshell. So if the percentages are too light or too heavy for whatever reason for a person, then can't you just say, hey, we're doing 85% unless it's too light or too heavy for you? So my answer to that question is another question. If you're willing to do that, then why are you doing percentages at all? Because ultimately what you're saying is, hey, I want it to be challenging, which I think is 85%. But if that's too heavy, then you should go lighter. If that's too light, then you should go heavier. So perhaps what you should just say to everyone is, we want it to be challenging with good mechanics, and I'm going to coach that to you in this session. And that to me would be, I truly believe coaching will trump just writing percentages. That doesn't mean that writing percentages is wrong, but coaching the athlete in front of you, knowing the athlete in front of you, and pushing them to what they're capable of on that day is more valuable than just giving them a number and saying, this is the number you should hit. But that, again, doesn't mean that prescribing percentages is wrong. So here are the final arguments for percentages. Percentages give people an aiming point, and an objective number that makes them feel good about hitting it. It also helps set a goal for the day, which I guess is the same thing. If this is done with the caveat of understanding that, hey, like, I love the idea that we're coming in here trying to do this percentage, but all these other things need to be in place. Like, you need to be moving well, you need to be fully recovered from yesterday to be able to hit those percentages. Otherwise, you won't be able to. Then I think percentages works really, really well. I'm going to continue this discussion as we look at the final arguments against percentages. Whoa, that's way too small. My apologies. Okay. Percentages don't allow for the flexibility and coaching required to appropriately apply relative intensity. Some of you will push back on that hard and say, well, yes, because I have percentages, but I still coach people. And that's fine. I know you do. But all I'm saying is that if you just took percentages and stuck to them and didn't allow any flex, then it wouldn't allow for relative intensity. If you're allowing that flex, I'm sorry, you're no longer truly doing the percentages. Like, you're not hitting them. So you've actually opted for not doing them, which is fine. But that's I guess the balance you want to strike. If you become flexible with percentages, you have lost the point of programming percentages. That's the second point here. You may as well say, go as heavy as possible for 5 today, or today's goal is to find a set of 5 that you could feel you could do for a few more reps, so it isn't a max. Those sentences correlate to a particular percentage in the traditional sense. They correlate to your 90 or your 85%. But I've found that those sentences there more broadly to a group of athletes speak to all the different circumstances in the room. Percentages will make a lot of people feel like they are not living up to what the program is asking. In a group environment, a lot of people can't and won't hit percentages. That's that's the fact of the matter. All the same benefits that percentages offer can be offered by coaching. And we've touched on this already. So if the whole point of programming this percentage is like, hey, I'm programming this percentage because I want people to go really heavy, you could just coach them to go really, really heavy. Just some things that I've added because, I mean, it probably goes without saying, if you're at Charge, you know that we don't necessarily use percentages. But if you're just like, hey, percentages are for me, there's no reason that in a program which perhaps doesn't have predefined percentages, you can't just add them yourself, and I guess keep them as a little bit of a goal. I would prefer to give somebody a weight as a goal based on how they're moving. But if you have the percentages, you can use this. This table here, it's called Prilipins. It's just like a vague, idea of what type of reps are optimal at what type of percentages. Also, not necessarily part of this conversation, but is like for adaptation. They've got what if you were squatting these weights. So if you're squatting 80%, the goal would be somewhere between 18 to 15 reps. That's an optimal of total reps. And then, the range of the reps, somewhere between 10 to 20 for the whole session. So rep, like, for example, if we're squatting 85% here, this table is suggesting you could do sets of 2 to 4, and we'd ideally get 15 reps in. So let's say we do threes, you do 5 sets of 3 for your 15 reps. That's optimal. That's what this table is suggesting. This table is, there'd probably be some people that don't agree with those numbers. But I found this program, I really like this program. I got this it's a sample program off Train Heroic. And this looks really cool. This is a weightlifting program with Hatch squat cycle. And those programs have percentages. I want you to look carefully at the exercises that are being prescribed here. This is a weightlifting only programming. So percentages are, how do I put it? They are easier to prescribe because the variance that exists in this program is much smaller, I guess is the right word, or it's much more contained. So therefore, look at Tuesday. If someone's done their hatch squats and they've done a muscle snatch and a power snatch and a clean, I can then think, right, on Thursday, I reckon that they could probably do 2 sets of 10 and then 2 sets of 8 at the prospective percentages, because I know exactly what they've done the day before. I may have seen this program play out with other people and know what they're capable of. In CrossFit, because of the variance that we have, and this is what makes the program so good, but also challenging to program for, is we genuinely don't know what effect certain stuff has on your ability and output the next day. This is one big science experiment. If you did on Monday 150 kettlebell swings in a workout with 150 toes to bar, with a salt bike and with running and with box jumps, and then on Tuesday you have back squats, it isn't conceivable that I know the exact effect, not that you need to know the exact effect, the effect that stimulus has had on all the different athletes that are going to back squat on Tuesday. There's more variability, if you will, to the to what impact that has on people. So, like, some people will probably rock up that day and be like, "Oh my god, I'm so sore from yesterday." Other people are like, "I'm fine," and that's we're still learning about the effects of those things. So, this is a great example of a program where percentages really make sense. In CrossFit, I think they perform a different role as to, okay, why are we using these? And their major role, and like I said, I'd like to think that I've seen plenty of gyms and plenty of affiliates, and I've seen some great gyms that use percentages. I've seen some great gyms that don't use percentages. And when I say great gyms, I just mean great affiliate programming. Ultimately, what they do is they use them with the knowledge of, okay, they are trying to guide people to do this. My belief is that coaching what's in front of you is more effective than doing that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I haven't seen it done with percentages really, really well. So if you're listening to this and you're sort of feeling, well, I have no idea what's better or worse, it's not about better or worse. It's about what's effective and ineffective. And if you would like to start working on percentages more as an individual, that's a chat you can have with myself or one of the coaches, and we can help you with these percentages. Because ultimately, I promise you, following percentages is not the thing that gets you strong. What gets you strong is moving really well at intensity. And whether or not you are looking at it to be 87.5% or whatever, if you put 140 kilos on the bar, it's 140 kilos on the bar, whether it was the percentage you're meant to hit or whether it's because you warmed up to something that felt heavy, but you were moving well, and that's going to have the same stimulus on you. It's going to get you strong. Rightio. I hope that makes sense for this conversation with percentages. I hope I haven't got any strength and conditioning coaches ready to jump down my neck. This is just my observations from my time in CrossFit and looking at affiliates and looking at athletes. And if you have anything you'd like to discuss more, please reach out. Coach's thoughts out.